You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. I'm your host, Saul Murtry, back again to dissect and discuss the John Carpenter films, both good and ill. We've been dedicating this season to the middle years, and we're now kind of starting to roll into the latter end of his film work as a director. And we are going to discuss now one of his, we're arguably going to be discussing from what potentially I feel is the last great film he did. And I know I'm tipping my hat quite early there, but this is what I want to have a talk about as we go through the nuts and bolts of the film. Those of you that aren't familiar with our podcast, we basically just, exactly as we said, dissect and discuss the plot narrative. Sometimes we jump all over the place, so bear with us as we go through this. And the reason we've been talking about John Carpenter is because he's one of the film greats, and we've been dedicating ourselves to dissecting his films for a while now. Back in season 3, we looked at his earlier films, and now we're kind of rounding things out, as I said. In order to do this, though, I do need to have somebody on my other side to discuss these films with me, and I'm had the pleasure of welcoming on board none other than Dr. Richard Lovegrove. Welcome aboard, sir.
Do you read Sutter Cane? Hello.
Hello, sir. I really wish I did read Sutter Cane.
Yes.
A healthy dose of insanity is a little bit of miss, I feel.
Yeah. As I think, as a diagnosis later on, it'll be more that you're reading your own story rather, sort of like a never-ending story sort of take, isn't it? So that every story that you read is going to be about your own unknown insanity.
That's pretty cool. I like the reference to Never-Ending Story because those that aren't familiar with this film, pause, go and watch the film, come back and join us.
Absolutely.
But because this will be spoilers, because we will kind of get into the guts of the film and talk about it. But the reason why I like that is because, as I said, if you aren't familiar with the film, it's a good analogy to make, because most people are familiar with Never-Ending Story, and exactly that is the story within a story within a story. And this is what unravels, in it, and throughout the course of the film. In some ways, a little bit convoluted and can get a little bit lost along the way. But there is method to that madness. If you hold on to it and stick with it, it makes sense when you come out the other side of it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Look, let's before we dissect the film, I always ask this to my colleagues: is like, when was the first time you watched it? And I think I know the answer to this, but for the sake of our listeners, if you could just indulge me and answer that question.
No, of course. Like most of these iconic sort of horror films or films that are cult sort of followings or people definitely have knowledge of. I've known references, bits, scenes, images mainly of this one. Being a fan of Sam Neill as well, there's always reoccurring images that'll come up in a documentary. And this has been one of his most prolific. I mean, it was a couple of years after he did Jurassic Park, so he was one of the big names. But he was still a well-known name before that in Hollywood because of the Omen trilogy. Was it the third Omen he was Damien? Yeah. And before that, he also had some other smaller horror films as well. And Dead Calm with Nicole Kidman and Billy Zane. I'd known about images of this, but my own sort of psyche has blended the imagery of this and Event Horizon, because I'd seen more of Event Horizon. I was imagining that. Having said that, I don't think I was disappointed, obviously because it was a great film, but knowing that it was going to be a similar sort of mind-bending horror, it paid off in dividends. I was extremely surprised when looking at this, what the content of the story was and how it was executed, both in a scary way that still today the jump scares work. The haunting aspects of which I'll get into it when we go through the film, my favorite scare or horror element in it. And then you've got that cosmic horror, which is so well known through from the 1800s, from Lovecraftian mythos. So very heavy. And then the point of view or perspective from every story that's ever written, and there are only a few, the most terrifying usually are the reflection of our own self or our own psyche. And so that's, as you were saying before, with the Never-Ending Story.
Yeah.
I'm sure when that came out, I know as a child it was quite confronting, because even when you realize some of the things that happen throughout the story, I don't want to spoil it too much, but I just want to tell you that in the books, the horse can speak. So that whole scene, he's talking to Atreyu, which makes it even more terrifying. But besides that, it's the film itself was profound. When I felt when I started watching it, I felt like I had seen it before. It was weird.
But
I think that's the magic of it.
There's a couple of things I'm going to touch on there, if I may. First thing, with the Never-Ending Story, the talking horse. I'm sorry, my head goes straight to comedy, and I just have this image of it's Atreyu, isn't it? It's the young.
Atreyu. Yeah, and Artax.
That's it. And then so Atreyu's just going, "Come on, don't give it," and just cut to the horse going, "Fuck off."
Fuck off! I'm going.
I've had enough. All right,
I've had it.
You walk yourself to the end of nowhere.
Yeah.
Oh. And the other thing was, Event Horizon. Yeah, look, coming back to the horror. When I rewatched this time round, I instantly thought of Event Horizon, and it kind of just made sense why Sam Neill got the part in Event Horizon. When you know this is part of his canon of work. So yeah,
absolutely. What year was that Event Horizon? I'm imagining it would have been.
Dude, I want to say 2001, but I
just with space.
I don't know that for sure. And the only reason I say that is because I was definitely at college at the time it came out.
Nice.
And I remember going to see it with a couple of college friends. And
1997.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, God.
Yeah.
I'm showing my age now then. I've missed a couple of years in my...
No, that's all right. It was college years. They're meant
college
to be
years.
Blacked out. Look,
Cool.
I'm sure so many people can't remember the 60s. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I reanimated a bird recently. And so
Hello.
This is Pikelet.
Hello, Pikelet. So, oh God, that makes sense. Yeah, it would have been 97. Yeah. And that would make sense because that was the year I graduated from high school in 96. So yeah, 97 makes sense. Woo, there you go. Okay, so so Event Horizon, I can totally get that. But you were saying that the film itself you'd only really kind of sat down proper to watch this in time for the podcast.
Yes, I hadn't actually seen the film or didn't know what the subject matter was about. I was expecting something like Event Horizon, something that took you to a scary place.
Yeah.
But then surprised in watching this, the amount of on-the-nose sort of references, like references to the Dunwich Horror or the Hobbs End, seemed like it was exactly the same. And
absolutely,
which was great. It was so grabbing. Plus, then you couple that with the cinematography and the choreography of shots and the repetition of the sequences that happen. I mean, John Carpenter is a master, which we know and we've seen. I mean, recently he did the They Live, and that still is iconic just in the imagery or in that one line, of walking into the bank and saying, "I'm here to chew bubblegum," and all of that. Yeah. I didn't review the film, so I don't need to remember the quote.
No, that's fine. That was down to myself and Miles were on that one. Yeah. But you're right.
Even with this film, and Sam Neill as a performer too, being even typecast in this role. And I know when Steven Spielberg speaks about casting him in Jurassic Park, the reason he chose those actors was because they were so natural. Jeff Goldblum obviously just has this this natural candor of repetition. And Sam Neill, especially in this film, you feel so comfortable with it. Yeah. I recently saw Cats and Dogs 3, which I don't recommend.
I didn't even know there was a third one. I didn't even know there was a second one to know there was a third one.
Oh, no, see the second one, Bette Midler is a hairless cat. It's a very good film. Yeah, but the third one is a straight to internet home movie. And it's not,
nice.
I haven't seen the end of it. But one of the things in that, you can notice the difference between performances. One of the actors in it was very honest and quite interesting. But the other actress that they were in the scene with just demonstrated the contrast in performance. In this scene, in this film, we haven't really got any poor actors. I mean, Charlton Heston
I
isn't it?
know, fucking hell, Charlton
Yeah.
Heston, my cold dead hands.
Yes, I was thinking exactly. Yeah, but also the woman who is in the film plays it very well. It's a very demanding position that she's playing. But Sam Neill's straight performance from beginning to end, you understand and sympathise with his plight in what he's going through. And I don't think that there's many performers who could do that nowadays or even at the time. So,
I have a lot of time for Sam Neill. A lot of time. I think we kind of spoke about him in Memoirs of an Invisible Man, because this is obviously his second outing with Carpenter. And the less said about that film, the better. But we did say that he pretty much was the reason to watch Memoirs of an Invisible Man is because he's so good in it.
Exactly. Yeah, performance-wise, absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of time for his work. And actually, I'm going to jump to a fact. So whether or not it's true, and I'm just going to hopefully scroll to it and find it now. So there's an overhead shot at the 56-minute mark, which apparently was suggested by Sam Neill. And he said that the film's editor would be thankful for the shot if they included it.
Cool.
And what I didn't realize is that he began his career as a director of commentaries. He began his career as a director of documentaries back in New Zealand. So he has got an idea or a flair of how films are needing to be shot. So yeah, exactly. So it kind of doesn't. When I read that at the start, the cold blunt fact of what he said, it kind of can come across as a bit arrogant. But when you add to the fact that he actually does know what he's talking about, it kind of then goes, it has merit.
What was the time code for that? It was
56 minutes and 11 seconds, according to Film School Rejects, where I'm getting this
Let's
list
just
from
go there now. Okay, and now you probably won't be able to see this, but the viewers at home, if they're watching, will be able to see it. I just got it playing on screen at 56:10. So it's an over-the-head shot where the female character is collapsed on the bed, almost passed out. This is where she just burst in the door, I think, and said, I'm losing myself. I'm losing myself.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so that's the overhead shot at 56:11 seconds.
There you go.
That's really good, a very Hitchcock sort of shot.
Yes, it is too. We should probably say that we keep saying the woman, and that's the woman in question is Julie Carmen, who I
apologize. Yes,
who's in it. Who apparently is a licensed psychotherapist.
Oh, wow, very cool.
Which kind of ties in nicely with this particular movie.
It's like Jane Fonda, who was famous for being an exorcist. No, exercising. That's it.
Your mother sews socks in hole. So I've always wanted to quote that weird reference.
Yes.
So yeah, cool. Okay, so we're saying there's a good solid cast, and particularly because we're talking about cast, the other person that we should probably talk about, the guy that plays Sutter Cane, is Jürgen Prochnow, who for me is the boat captain in Das Boot. He was also in David Lynch's Dune, which playing Duke Leto Atreides.
That's right. They're remaking that now too.
They are, which hopefully will be a ton sight better than Lynch's vision. Which,
I know nothing of it, but I've seen the trailers for the new one, and it intrigues me. It looks better than that other one that they did that flopped. The one with the witch from Suicide Squad. I can't remember what it was, and I should think of what it was, but not gonna.
I don't know. I don't know which one you mean, but
another one with mentioning cast members. I don't know which cast member he plays, but I'm pretty sure it is Viggo. What is it from Vlad from Ghostbusters 2? Viggo the Carpathian.
Viggo the Carpathian. Yes. That's exactly right. You're right. He's the dude that's the kind of main villager, I want to say, in it, but I can't remember his character's name. Cool. And there's a few other people that we should probably mention as well. One of them being John Glover. who people may know as Lionel Luthor in the Smallville's TV series.
Yes.
And he plays Saperstein, the guy that kind of runs the clinic that we see at the beginning, the kind of very camp kind of dude at the very beginning.
Oh, yes. Iconic. Yeah, he's the one who says, "Do you read Sutter Cane?" And yes, very iconic. I've seen him in so many things, can't remember.
So many other things. And then, and also David Warner, speaking of tie-ins to The Omen, he's also in this as the Dr. Wren character at the very beginning and at the end of the film. And David Warner, my God, that guy's a legend. I could talk hours about him alone, but we're here to talk about the film In the Mouth of Madness, so I will have to put him to one side.
And just to add, it's Wilhelm von Homburg. He's the man who plays Vigo, the Carpathian in Ghostbusters. And
thank you.
He's the man who runs up to the church, demanding, I think, his child.
Yeah,
but we'll get to that.
With an axe. I have an axe.
Exactly. That's, I think, the only reply. I looked up online and it said, if someone says to you, "Do you read Sutter Cane?" you say, "Why are you axing?" Or "Why are you axing me?" Because that's what happens. He goes, "Did you read the book?" And he goes, "Yes, I liked it." Well, then you know that this has to happen.
Yes. So Sutter Cane. That's a whole different thing in itself, and we'll kind of get to that at some point. One thing we will say, and I know we're kind of on the cusp of actually kind of cutting and doing our first incision to dissect this thing. But one thing I will say just before we get into that is that apparently, the film was written by Michael DeLuca, the script, and he apparently wanted John Carpenter to direct it. It was one of his first choices, and Carpenter actually turned it down initially. And this was like in the 80s, like at some point. And then it went to, I think it kind of went to Tony Randall, and that fell through. Then Mary Lambert, who directed Pet Sematary, was attached at some point. And then a few years later on, then Carpenter came back to Carpenter and he signed on the dotted line to do it. So it kind of makes you wonder why he turned it down to begin with. Anyway, but the last thing I'm going to mention also is that this particular film has become associated with what is now known as John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy, and the first of those being The Thing, then the second one being Prince of Darkness, and then now this one. Basically, because they have apocalyptic themes within it. Which also now makes me want to go and watch all three of those back to back, because I think that would be a mammoth session. I would love it.
Oh, yeah. The dissection alone for The Thing could go on for days.
We did that one a while back, and it's one of those ones we haven't yet revisited any films to have a second dissection. But if we were ever to do one, that would definitely be at the top of my list to do so. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Reference elements of that, surely, if you were dissecting the second one or the prequel, as it were.
If we were to
or even the original.
Yeah, exactly. That would be cool. And if we ever came back to dissect In the Mouth of Madness, we could then dissect our dissection of In the Mouth of Madness, just to kind of keep in with the dissection within the dissection of a dissection.
Exactly. It's all just turtles all the way down.
All the way down.
Yeah. But even just talking about Michael DeLuca, he of course, prolific work, so many films, but it's A Social Network, Captain Phillips, are a couple that the audience might have known. But also, too, you mentioned the director of Pet Sematary. And speaking of another female director who surprised me in horror elements, I assume this would be horror, but the film Ravenous. With Guy Pearce and Robert Carlyle. I recently had watched that again and was extremely impressed by it. And then watched the documentary and found out that it was a film that Guy Pearce was working on, and they lost their director, or there was something to do with that. So he called her, who was directing, television in England. And so she was a television director. But said, "Oh, look, you work with actors really, really well. Come along. We want you to do this film." And if you watch the film again, from a performance perspective, I mean, it's absolutely brilliant just the way the actors are moving through it. Like how you said with Sam Neill having a film background suggesting a shot. In that same way, she was using the actor's experience by saying, okay, well, your characters have been, pretty fleshed out. Pardon the pun. From that, therefore, the best motivations for the next move in the film. And it's a fantastic film. And I think it would be on the horror element purely because it has, horror aspects to it. But another...
Oh, totally was. Yeah, so that 1999, that film came out. And off the top of my head, I want to say the director's name was Antonia Bird.
Antonia Bird, yeah,
I'm right with that.
Is that right?
Anyway, but I at the time was working in a home entertainment rental store.
Yes,
that is cool. no longer in business.
How apt.
Yeah. And
Antonia Bird.
Antonia, it was her. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank God for my memory. But I do remember that film because it was the same time as like the likes of Stigmata and End of Days and that kind of so there was all these kind of like cheapy kind of not so good but kind of watchable horror films that were out, and I remember that film distinctly kind of going, I'll give this one a whirl, and being pleasantly surprised. Robert Carlyle's in it too, and he's absolutely amazing.
He's brilliant, yeah. He's also awesome in Hitler Rise to Power, I think it's called, or something like that. But another great performance. He's a very good character performance actor.
Totally, absolutely. All right, so look, let's start dissecting In the Mouth of Madness then, and as we go through this, and I know we already mentioned it, but we do have a third podcaster here with us today in our little bird that's kind of dropped in, and so every so often we might hear a few kind of tweets and stuff along the way, just to add to the, he's going to be our canary.
Exactly. He's going to let us know when we have to go.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so let's start dissecting this. So we do open up. So it's one of these films that is predominantly told in flashback. But we do kind of start with the opening sequence where we see a very kind of clean looking kind of mental institute with the John Glover character that I was mentioning, Saperstein. And we then get, it's hard to tell at the time when we first see Sam Neill because he's shot from kind of behind and below, and we don't really see his face properly. But it is Sam Neill's character, John Trent, being kind of brought into the asylum and then being locked up into one of the wards there.
Just before that, the title sequence, which is entering the film now, title sequences, I think, of the most interesting.
Oh God, yes, sorry, yes.
Just because the beginning of the film and the end of the film, the first thing you see and the last thing you see are the most important areas, I think, in the film, because you're going to get caught by that straight away. Conventionally, it used to be title cards, in which case you would do your end credits first, and that used to be if you watch Wizard of Oz. That's a clear example. Everything's at the beginning, and then at the end of the film, it ends. Or there might be a couple.
Confuses my kids because they always, like, when we watch older films, they always think the film's finished when we put it on. It's like, why is it finished? It's like, no, it's not. It's beginning.
But I think Star Wars was one of the first films that really played with that convention and shattered it by starting with that title crawl. Since then, horror films especially have been one of the best consistent ways of keeping an interesting title sequence. So for this, just mentioning, zombie films, Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that, 28 weeks later, those sort of interesting elements start up. This film I really liked because, again, it starts off and you don't know what it's doing. And I instantly went, Charlie, the Chocolate Factory, it's some sort of mechanical thing. And it was printing press, it was magazines, they didn't know what it was. And then you see the literal title of the film going "Dagun, Dagun, Dagun" in front of you, and you're going, it says "Coming soon in the Mouth of Madness." That's the title of this film. Yeah. So it's interesting that instantly it does that. Then, as you say, it moves into the next sequence, which is in the hospital. Yeah. And you have no idea. I didn't know if it was Sam Neill yet, but he kicks that guy in the balls and gets dragged through in this beautiful, almost, it's not brutalist architecture, which is the sort of architecture that you'll see in A Clockwork Orange, which is beautiful. I love it, cements and weird and stuff. But this is almost like an insane asylum, but a large quarantine facility, it looks like.
Yep.
Yeah. Very stark whites and stuff like that, and our extreme character performer is the head doctor there with the big bow tie and a
yeah,
Spanish hair.
I love that. I love his character. He's not in it enough.
No, you're right. Yeah,
but yeah, really, really cool.
And one of the things I liked about that too is like when he's walking away from a phone call he's just made, there's a shower in the middle of the hallway.
Yes.
And working around old places, especially the Everly ironworks and stuff like that, there's all of these eye washes and stuff like that you'll find around there. So I love those sort of things, and it just makes your mind boggle that in this sort of place that we find out is a mental institution, why they have a shower in the middle of the
yeah, that's right.
Just a little side note.
I do want to go back to what you were saying about the opening credits as well, because it was actually filmed by the second unit, but it was actually at their printing press in Toronto, Canada, which is why we get loads of that kind of like that printing imagery that you were referring to.
Oh, Canada.
Canada. The asylum.
So we know who to blame.
Yeah. So those are the asylum that we're talking about. The exterior of it and the main hall is actually a water reclamation plant of Lake Ontario. But all the basement kind of cells and stuff that we see Sam Neill get taken to was actually on set. So, but the main bit that we were talking about was for the architecture that you were referring to. Is from a water reclamation plant.
Those are actually used quite a lot in film. I know that there's quite a lot of B movies that use that, but also too up-budget films. I think it was in one of the Transformers films or something. Another water reclamation place, purely because they usually around a very lush area in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. Yeah, and I love like one of the things I'm kind of letting a little insight into. One of the things that I love about imagery is the juxtaposition of nature against man-made buildings that have been left or run down, like evidence of mankind at its power. So, and then kind of being left to one side. So, like all the shots of Chernobyl, and things like that, where the towns is like, and you've got all the plant life and stuff creeping back in. I love that kind of imagery. That to me, there's something quite evocative about it.
Have you ever looked into the mud flood theory?
No.
It's a theory that some of the cities throughout the world were covered by mud flows or an interesting phenomenon which is caused during earthquakes. It shakes the earth and actually buries like quicksand.
Sure.
But it is a theory that I like looking into it, and there's a couple that are very easy to debunk, but there's a lot of very questioning photos that are taken of like cities being excavated, like literal entire stories underneath the earth being uncovered. And the question is, has this been covered up? There's a church in America, I think it is, which had an entire level completely covered up with stained glass windows all under earth. And it just raises the question, why would someone do that? But it's an interesting theory or conspiracy, I think, to look into. But there is a YouTuber called The Armored Skeptic who recently goes into it. Very interesting videos and stuff like that. But the photos alone, if you like that sort of semi-apocalyptic, Earth and nature, some of those photos are great. You'll see the Earth up to here and a building still buried halfway through. And you just how do you explain that? But very, very interesting things in that. Canada is used quite throughout this film. I mean,
it is. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff shot in Canada. Yeah,
in Hobbs End especially.
You can tell. Actually, Hobbs End looks Canadian. The town. Yeah.
It looks Canadian.
It looks Canadian. If you just one glance at it, you go, "Oh, that's definitely Canada."
Canada.
Okay, so we have Trent kind of wheeled off. He then gets visited by Dr. Wren, which is the, as I said, played by David Warner.
I'm sorry about the balls. It was just a lucky shot. Best line. That's his opening line. It's great.
And he, and this is where he, we're told, this is, we cut to a little bit of time later though, isn't it? When Warner's character enters the fray, because Trent's character, Sam Neill's character Trent has been quite busy decorating the walls of his room and his pajamas and his face.
With crucifixes. Or crosses.
And crosses, inverted crosses.
Lowercase t's. But this is because when he gets put into the cell, he has a vision where he sees the church axes and all of this twisted imagery. He something smashes behind the glass, but he also sees something in the cell with him. He collapses on the bed, and that's, I assume, what sends him into that fray, which leads him to believe that he's got to stay in the cell.
Yes.
He can't leave because, I don't know, the baddies will get him. And that's, as you say, when the guy who, Billy Zane's bodyguard arrives. Billy Zane's bodyguard gets led into the ward where there's crosses everywhere. He asks him a question, and he just says, "Wait a minute." I love it, very calm, just like, "Wait a second, I just got to finish this specific tea."
There's a bit. I don't know if it's in that scene, but where the glass of his her cell breaks. Apparently, the window where the window shattered, it was quite. Sam Neill ended up getting cut for some reason, or somehow in that instance, and he wasn't too happy about it. And I'm saying that for a reason, because when we get to it a bit later on, there's another bit of a connection there later on. So then, excuse me. Then Trent tells his tale, and we kind of basically find out that he is a very successful freelance insurance investigator. And he opens up with this conversation with another. It's this whole scene where he's talking to a guy who ends up frauding. Basically, he's using, and his wife's been kind of spending the money and stuff. It's a bit of a nothing scene, but it's just to kind of introduce the cutthroat style that Trent has in order to get the results. Essentially, he doesn't take any shit from anyone. He just wants the answers, and that's the gist of that. So, but at this point, then he's then called upon to investigate a claim by New York-based publishing company called Arcane. So he's been called in there to kind of investigate something. So, and it's the guy that who kind of basically is telling him about this job. And they go and have a lunch or something at a cafe. And while they're there, this is when we get this great long shot, like build-up shot. I don't mean kind of like one continuous take. Of this guy that suddenly just comes out of this building opposite them. He's got an axe in his hand, and he's like slowly goes across the street. Are you going to say something there?
Yeah, I was just going to say just before it, because there's a bus that's there, and it's like, move that bus. But on that bus, there's a banner advertising Sutter Cane's In the Mouth of Madness. And that pulls away. And as you say, that's when out of the door comes this man with goat eyes.
Put away those eyes.
And sort of threatens someone, which I thought was interesting too, because instantly you're reading into what are the effects of this person. Is he zombified? Is he possessed? Is he doing it off his own will? Is he doing it like a Saw type situation? I have to do this case. But people come running out of the store he's in, and he threatens people with the axe and then just continues walking. So it gives you the impression that he's still cognitive of thought. It's not demon possession. It's not, his body like fighting against it. Or if it is fighting against it, he's got very little will.
Yes.
Yeah. I found that.
Yeah, that's right. No, definitely. And even to the point where, as I said, he walks across a freeway and he's heading straight towards Sam Neill and the other characters who he's having lunch with. And you can see that, and they're none the wiser of the mayhem that looks like it's ensuing outside as this guy continues to walk up. And he basically gets to the glass outside, and like there's people like sitting on those coffee tables outside with the umbrellas and stuff. And they start running off all over the place. And he basically stops outside of the window, and he's just looking at Sam Neill. And at which point he raises the axe and smashes the glass. And that's where he then kind of the other guy cowers behind a chair, and Sam Neill's just kind of there in the booth. Excuse me. And that's when they stands on the table. Yeah, he stands on the table, and that's where he says the line, "Have you read Sutter Cane?"
But you look into these blue eyes that are like in the Mummy. It's two pupils in each of his eyes.
That's right.
That's like I thought it was a goat eye because I was like, oh, cool, it's demon, like it's in that reference. But the two pupils is creepy as. But he squats down very calmly and says to him, "Do you read Sutter Cane?"
Do you read Sutter Cane? And at which point he raises the axe and looks like he's going to wield it down and is shot dead by a police officer before he can harm Trent. We then find out. We also then, true, yeah. But we also find out, I can't remember if it's in this bit or not, but we also find out that the guy in question with the axe was actually Kane's agent, who's gone insane and killed his family after reading one of Kane's books. I think we find that out a little bit later on, but that does happen.
That does happen.
It does happen,
Yeah.
Okay. So now we then get to the point where we meet Charlton Heston for the first time. And he runs the said Arcane Publishing house. And he's the director there. His name is Jackson Hargrew. Hargrew! And he's basically alleging that Sutter Cane, the novelist, has disappeared. And he vanished days before his latest book was released, which is the In the Mouth of Madness book.
And obviously puts Charlton Heston in a tough position because he needs to be able to capitalize on that because it's due for the public.
Yeah.
But before this scene, we start with a whole bunch of imagery, almost akin to H.G. Geiger. It's that Lovecraftian style, but it almost has that Geiger-esque mechanical tubing sort of look. But yeah, very cool because just before that he takes a shot glass and then he comes into the whole situation with Charlton Heston.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Yes, and there's lots of that kind of gorgeous, very quick fire imagery that's at play within this, which when you combine that with like the slow kind of shots that are the build up of the narrative and stuff, it's that again, it's playing with that juxtaposition stuff that's played within the film, and from a viewer can add to the unsettling feeling that's going on, or the sense of growing mania that's about to ensue. Sorry.
Interesting. No, that's right. I'm just looking at it as well. I assume what it says is Sutter Cane in the Mouth of Madness on the cup that she brings in. She's got a mug, but it'd be interesting just to see if I assume that says it. It looks like it says Sutter Cane. It's done with the same sort of font styling as she's walking in there. But that's the first time we get introduced to this character. Well.
Yeah, to the female character. That's right, Linda Stiles.
Linda Stiles, played by what was her name?
Julie Carmen.
Yes, of course.
So obviously, it's probably a good point here to say as well that obviously the name Sutter Cane, I mean, we talked about Lovecraft, but the name Sutter Cane is a massive reference to Stephen King as well. Just in the analogy of the name Sutter Cane, Stephen King,
yes.
And that Stephen King at the time was also a prolific horror writer as well. So it's kind of playing with the idea of someone like Stephen King of being that kind of successful that people do buy his books.
And make larger media from that, like feature films and
exactly. Yeah. So that's what it's kind of playing with that idea that this is the kind of person Sutter Cane is, and yet we've yet to meet him. Excuse me.
Interesting too that the company is called Arcane, Arcane, and he's Sutter Cane.
Sutter Cane, yeah. Arcane.
Arcane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to bring up as well at this point too, we've only seen a couple of scenes with Sam Neill, maybe let's say 4, and 2 of those scenes he's smoking.
Yes, he smokes a lot.
Obviously,
in this.
But even for the time, I mean, it must have been a conscious decision to make the character smoke. I think towards the end of the film, we'll get to it, but I want to just take note of maybe it's a character trait that he loses, and it's also part of his dependency. Following up on that, it does say Sutter Cane in the Mouth of Madness on her mug. She just shows it.
Cool. Yeah. Nice. A good pickup. Get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape.
You blew it up.
Why? We get introduced to Charlton Heston, and he's look, he's only in 2 scenes as well. He's in the beginning and semi towards the end for someone of such.
That's
high
how
stature.
you use a cameo, though. That's how you use a cameo.
Yeah.
True,
very true.
He was armed the whole time as well.
He was armed to the dozen.
Yes. Yeah.
He had Sex Machine's gun in his hand.
That's why he had to be sitting the whole time.
Ready to draw. That's it.
Yes. Ready and equipped, both barrels loaded.
Yeah, that's it. Don't call me a prick. Yeah. So anyway, sideways digression. Okay.
No, that's right. But during that scene, that's when Charlton Heston pretty much says we need to get him back, and he says, "Well, I'll go and find him." And Charlton says, "Well, I'm going to send a Carmen along with you." Sorry.
You're not going to go on your own. You need to have a female character to come with you because we need a female character.
It's in the contract.
Yeah.
It's in the script.
It's written. Sutter Cane wrote it. It has to happen.
It's surprisingly apt, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just like, because you wrote me that way. That's a great reply. It's such a good reply. But yes, no, exactly. We have a moment too where he's sort of discussing this with Linda Stiles and sort of being almost oppressive. And you get this, I don't know if they were getting a romantic tension set up there or if it was supposed to play with that awkwardness, because their relationship doesn't and never feels like it's romantic territory.
No, it doesn't. It's just as disjointed as the script is, you know. And there are points where it's trying to force that to happen, and that's what makes it delightfully uncomfortable.
Yes.
So, but I do want to just quickly add too, like one of the reasons that they don't really want him to get Sutter Cane. They basically want him to get this unfinished novel.
You're right. Sorry, they don't want Kane. They just want the book.
Just want the book, because it's late. They need it.
Oh, that's right. And he's very clear about that too. About saying like, I've got to make the profit and
that's it.
Yeah. Him.
That's right. And so so he said after reading a few of the novels for research. Oh yeah, that's right. So so the next kind of little chunk. So he doesn't go straight away. He starts reading some of the novels or getting kind of, for part of his research, he kind of starts dabbling into some of the books and stuff. And this is where Trent starts first getting nightmares.
Yeah, just before that.
And that. Yeah.
We have the moment where it's at the elevator and they have that sort of discussion about maybe you should read his works. And we cut to the alleyway where he's walking down. This is one of the repetitious sequences.
Yeah.
This is the first time. And he's walking down with a brown paper bag, which I at the time assumed was the books. But we get later on and we see him going out and buying the books. So he's walking down there with something, but he stops at 3 posters that are bill posters that are just up on the side of the wall in a sort of city alleyway. Yeah. And it's advertising the Hobbs End Horror. And that was the reference that I made before that reminded me so much instantly of the Dunwich Horror, but also of Shadow over Innsmouth. Sort of this weird hybrid. There, but the imagery being contrasting. He walks up to that and he sees part of it's torn and he starts to tear it open. We don't see what's behind that, but he is drawn by a sound in the alleyway just around the corner of someone getting beaten up.
Yes.
And so he, you enjoyed that scene, didn't you? Continues around the scene and there's a group of homeless people watching one homeless person being beaten by a police officer.
Yes, that's right.
Who then turns around and says, "You want some of this?" I think it is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and he sort of backs away and walks off.
That's exactly right. So there's something just on that too, and I know we're jumping around a fair bit, but just with the reference to Hobbs End Horror, obviously you were talking about it being connected to the Dunwich Horror, and there's a lot of the Sutter Cane novels that come up in this, which are direct nods to H.P. Lovecraft stories. For example, there's The Whisper of the Dark, which is The Whisper in Darkness. There's The Thing in the Basement, which is The Thing on the Doorstep. We have Haunter Out of Time, which is The Haunter of the Dark or The Shadow of Time, and then we get to Hobbs End Horror, which is Dunwich Horror. But also the last one is a reference to Hobbs End Underground Station, which is from the film Quatermass and the Pit, which we've also referenced before in these podcasts with it was a film by the Hammer production team, and we've mentioned it before in another John Carpenter podcast because he does like his Quatermass in the Pit.
Yes.
So it's come up before. So there's a couple of these things in there, which is kind of nice little nods to the influences behind the film.
No, it's great. It definitely drew. If you're at all familiar with any of those sort of stylistic elements or even those titles, yeah, it instantly intrigues you because you think that you're a part of a secret that the film is hinting at.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a part of the first season, and I really liked it because we think we know what's behind that poster, but we never see it, and he stops and walks around the corner. Yeah. Which is great because after that, again, we have another sequence when he's watching the film. Sorry, not the film. He's watching riots happening, and these riots are due to apparently people reading the books and going insane and attacking people. And he gets a phone call. I'm not too sure what happens at this phone call, but he speaks to someone on the phone about what's happening. I think it's just saying that he's going to have to start reading the books. And I think
that's right.
Exposition, really.
There's one last thing I was just going to touch on that little subtle thing you mentioned about him, the old kind of posters, the billboard posters, with him kind of lifting at the crease. You kind of almost look at what's underneath. And I'm not going to say it just yet, but that to me just struck me that's a nice little cyclical thing about the way the film ends right at the very, very end about lifting or ripping up paper. And I'll leave that there as well.
Oh, yes,
And until we get to the point in question at the end. So, okay, so he starts kind of reading some of the novels, and this is where his nightmares start really coming to effect. And visions of monsters and deformed people murdering each other with axes, and the same dude that he saw that was Sutter's agent coming back as one of the homeless people. The policeman also looks a bit kind of deformed now as well, in some of these kind of nightmare things. So he's reimagining some of this stuff that's happening. Linda also, I think Linda may be the one that calls him up, and she explains the stories are known to cause disorientation, memory loss, and paranoia in less stable readers. And at this point, as Trent's kind of examining the books, this is when he notices a series of red lines on the book covers. And then he starts kind of frantically kind of cutting around these red lines, and then he forms a shape, which looks like the outline of New Hampshire, and marks a location alluded to be Hobbs End, the fictional setting for many of Cain's works. And Hobbs End, in that sense, with a connection with Stephen King, is a big nod to, obviously, King writes a lot about Derry, Maine, in his one. So that kind of repetition of the similar kind of town. And when they do go there, it does kind of feel like it could easily be Derry,
Yeah,
in the way that some of the imagery that's evoked from that town centre. Oh, excuse me. So sorry.
No, you're right.
All right.
I saw someone pieced together those book covers as well, and found out that it was the position of where it was, and I think it was something like Coventry or something was the area the town that it was most likely in, because when you put that map over the top of New Hampshire, it the dot is actually a 5-mile radius, so it could be like one of a couple of towns, but I think it starts with C, and it's something like that. But it's a cute small town that looks almost exactly the same as Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
It's
nice.
More American.
Yes.
So it does exist. I always love those sort of things. It's like when people say, where does the Simpsons Springfield exist? And there's a couple of places, but watch a game theory or a film theory about that. But yes, he now knows the location.
Yeah, that's right. So now they set out, as in Trent and Linda set out to find the town. And they have a very long night's drive. And at some point, there's a bit before that, before night descends, where there's a bit of a silly moment between the two of them. She's asleep, and he, what does he do? He kind of throws something at her, or
he gets a bicycle horn.
Oh, that's it. And plays it, and she wakes up, and
Yeah, that feels so forced.
It really did. It didn't feel natural. But
No, it
again, maybe that lends weight to the curious oddity of their relationship anyway.
Yeah,
And then
he's trying to be.
yeah, and then she throws corn chips at him, and he's like, "Don't throw corn chips in the car."
Yeah. Also, another thing too. Not that it's a big thing, but in that scene, because the ending of that scene when she throws all of the nuts or whatever over him, his reaction is great, and he has this sort of like ad lib at the end, where it's just like, "I'm covered in shit." It's great. But in that scene, I just noticed he's wearing his top. He's not wearing a tie, but he's wearing his top button done up.
Yeah.
And usually it's not a universal thing, but when you're presenting certain characters as to the audience, the instant way that you look uptight, unhinged, or OCD, but even also insane, is doing up a top button unnecessarily.
Right.
So that might be another nod that, like, in that moment or during this sequence, which now happens, which is one of my favorite sequences. So not when he's driving, when she's driving.
When she's driving, and we'll come to that in a second, because I do want to touch on something that's another massive segue from what you just mentioned, and I'm loving the fact that these little images are popping in my mind as you're talking. But you're talking about the top button done up of the collar. I can't stand that personally. I can't have that. It just feels like it's pressing on my neck too much. But exactly. But somebody who does like that is David Lynch, and he's renowned for having his top button done up, and even cast Carl McLaughlin's character in Blue Velvet to have particularly the top button done up as a kind of a bit of a self-reflection thing. And that your comment about that being kind of somebody that's tightly restrained, I think speaks well of the character that Carl McLaughlin plays in Blue Velvet too, because he's kind of like this very rigid kind of character who opens up the remnants and the underworld of the American dream in his pursuit of mystery in that film. And I know it's not really horror per se, but there are horrific elements in that, particularly Dennis Hopper, glorious in that film. But yeah, you just kind of remind me of that bit there. And
after that, they have another discussion. That's when they sort of swap over in their driving.
Yeah. So I think I may be jumping back, but the bit where Trent has a nightmare, I think it's in this bit earlier before they went on their trip.
Yeah.
Is that the bit where he has the dream within a dream sequence?
Yeah, he keeps waking up and looking over, and the policeman sits next to him, and then he wakes up again.
That's right.
Or something to that effect. I think he wakes up and something happens.
So there's a Carpenter mentioned there, he said there's an old trick, and it's an old horror trick, I should say, and he first used it in Prince of Darkness, and he actually said it worked better in Prince of Darkness than in here, because the monster was a little bit scarier, and he said, but it works okay. Because
the repetition things definitely seems to be a motif that he does in this film. But it's also a motif in the subject matter too, because when you think about also our own life and memory, even ourselves, every time we remember something, our brain actively has to relive that as if we were experiencing it again, and that way we record it even more so. Sorry, I had a bit of a flutter.
That was awesome. Cool. So yes, now we come to the point that we're talking about, and you were hinting that you really like this next kind of set sequence.
Yeah, I love this sequence.
It's an awesome sequence. Go on. You lead it. Go on. You talk about
it.
Okay. No. Oh, I know well.
Okay, all right. Unconventional scares and different ways of using a jump scare element. Obviously, in this film, we've seen jump scares before, but the subject matter of this makes you want and yearn for something that's just going to be a little bit more closer to home. And for anyone who's ever gone for long drives and felt tired whilst driving, you almost have this element where you'll feel like you have a micro sleep, or it's just before you're going to get worried about that you think, oh, am I like consciously driving? Did I just remember that last second? Should I stop? And your brain will give you that adrenaline. But during that, you'll start to sort of get into a trance state where everything just becomes familiar. So that if you see something that's along the street, out of the place, in the middle of the road, a young kid riding a bike frantically with these playing cards in the spokes. Yeah, that's out of place. But then as you pass them, they look concerned, and they're looking at you concerned. And in that moment, I was almost thinking, why wouldn't you stop or say something to them? But again, it's most likely a dream sort of state. It's a trance type thing.
That's right.
But then she continues driving along the same way, and she sees another bicycle in front, and that's when she goes past that, and it looks like a grey-haired old man.
Yes.
But passes him and wearing similar denim outfit, like a denim jacket, denim jeans, young sort of clothes, but old person.
Older. And it has the cards in the spokes still.
You're right. Sorry, exact same bike, and it has the cards and spokes making that sound.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any sound or music behind this, but bar that sort of sound effect.
I think so. Yeah.
Driving. Yeah. And I think they pass again, and that's when they lock eye contact.
Three times. Yeah.
3 times, and the third time that's when they get the hit. That's it's coming towards her. They hit it. She pulls over to the side of the road. Sam Neill wakes up, which I thought was interesting too, because now it's a shared delusion, a shared experience, something like that.
So the bike hits the front of the car. That's right, and so then
it goes over and lands on the road.
And they kind of go to check it out. Sam wakes up, and as she's standing there looking at the body, the old guy rides past her again. Which kind of makes her go, what?
He says, I can't leave, I can't get out, something to that effect.
Yes.
Because he says something, and then she steps back, and then when she steps back, we see that he's riding now behind her, but her eye focus was still where he was, which is another great thing. Oh, that's right. The eyes are glassy. The eyes, when she hits the car, is just completely glassy, like a person riding, which again is also eerie. But once they're driving off, Sam Neill comes up with a blanket that he's got out of the car and said, he must have been all right.
Yeah.
And he's riding off down the street, which the shared delusion, he saw that. He also hasn't said anything about this hair, this crazy hair and this old person. But it instantly plays on your mind of going, like, because he's a young boy. The actor, I'm pretty sure, is that same young boy actor, just in old person makeup.
Yeah.
So it gave me the impression that his psyche is still a boy, and he's aging. He's having to go through this. He's trying to get out. He's doing the same thing, which I don't want to jump ahead, but happens later on. Again, repetition. They rhyme. That happens throughout the film. Is he's at that point. He's now trying to make that cycle out, whether or not he actually exists. Because again, this is coming from a perception of a character that later on we question when she was involved and if she was involved. So, is it all from Sam Neill? Did he hit the person? Is he experiencing this and vicariously doing a Munchausen by proxy, or something? But what I found strange about this, because that sort of ends and they get back in the car and he's driving off. But just the eeriness of that whole seeing the car, I got real shivers the second time we saw the bike. Yes. I was like, I don't know what we're going to see on the face. And it really sort of put me on edge because I was and then when it was just looking, it scared me even more because if you were in a car doing that and you saw someone going past, that's scary as well. It being the same person, like so many like cosmic sort of unknown horrors that you were sort of going, what's this going to do? I'm scared. And then paying off the way it did, it was brilliant. I found it strange though that after they get back in the car, she's driving again.
Yes, that is weird. But then that makes you, I wonder though if all of that is still part of that her dream sequence. And I'll come to why I say that in a second, because the next bit we see is that she's looking out the window and it's like she's driving over thunderclouds, which would seem to suggest that she's in this translated state. Then she goes through the bridges of Madison County Bridge.
Or the Beetlejuice Bridge.
And then when they come out the other side, it's daylight all of a sudden. At which point Sam Neill wakes up. And he says, I must have slept through that. You must have driven all through the night.
The whole night.
So that, to me, and there's no mention of anything to do with the kid before or the old dude. So that kind of makes me think, like, was that all either his dream or her dream? Experience of it, So,
Again, because this is really interesting because a lot of the films, when you can dissect it, and I'm jumping ahead, which I want to re-clarify later on, but it gives you the question at this point, after rewatching it, is this, as you said, his daydream that's vicariously living through her and justifying it that way, it being a sort of like side sort of thing, or exactly is she someone who gets lost along the way, and it is her experiences, or like it's brilliant because it is set up in such a way that everything is right because everything is unknown, like you know, or everything is wrong because everything is unknown. But yeah, they slam on the brakes getting across that bridge, and again, I love that she's staring across the bridge, doesn't say anything, but he's calm, wakes up, and he takes over driving, which we know. But made the call too of saying, "I thought you said you didn't know where it was," and the whole time they are making the reference that they're lost.
Yes,
they don't know where they're going, but they're passing cornfields, and this may be another like Stephen King reference. Yeah, definitely. He who walks behind the rose.
And also, what's the first thing? What's the first humans that we see when they get into the town? A bunch of kids running around. So I definitely think it's a massive nod to the Children of the Corn. Massive.
And deformed, but even too like a Village of the Damned sort of elements we get later on. But in Shadow over Innsmouth, when we first saw those kids, that was I felt that because we see the scars on their face. And I loved that. But also too, then you've got the polio. People who like, it's not my generation, but I know that previous generations had smallpox. Obviously we have our own equivalents, but it was still a scary thing to see these effects, like a leprosy sort of thing, the same way as biblical stories talk about the lepers, because was something moralistically that we had to be careful to be around them because of disease, but also too, it was a warning about afflictions that were passed on in a mythical sense, to try and promote things like well-being, sanitation, animal husbandry, you know, the generic. But once I get to the town...
But what have the Romans ever done for us?
Yes, besides sanitation. Which, surprisingly enough, were all pre-existing things that the Romans only improved upon.
Yeah, they stole ideas, a lot of it from the Greeks.
Which is most history, I guess. But also Sam Neill in the town looks into a window of antiques and says, "Oh, where do they get all this shit?" So he's instantly, obviously, outspokenly against where he's at. And usually this is from a perspective psychologically, I assume, from the idea of justifying it. Otherwise, why would you say it out loud? You're trying to benefit your own psyche here by putting something else down so that you're feeling slightly better. But also, too, he doesn't see the children.
No, he doesn't. That's right. No. He doesn't. Only she does. That's right.
Which I thought was interesting, too, to bring out off the bat. It was like, okay, so it is something that's somewhat visionarily delusional.
Yeah. And they then check into a hotel.
A great little hotel.
Which I have another one of these facts somewhere here. The Pickman Hotel is a home built by a man for his wife. But apparently she died en route to America. And so then he turned it into a bit of a shrine for her. So that's why it's got this very kind of magnanimous kind of feel to it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Is that the interior shot as well at that location?
I'm not sure. This is just something that he said in the commentary.
That's beautiful, though. Tragic, but beautiful. I always love to hear, especially when people have built structures in love or memory of someone. It seems so much more like, we very rarely make large church-type structures nowadays. No. So to see structures like that, it's just gorgeous. I was even going to make reference to part of the house interior reminded me of the Winchester house, which I know that we've referenced before, but recently went into looking into the inscriptions that are in the ballroom. There's 2 Shakespearean quotes. Yeah, and I was meaning to do an in-depth report where and repeat the monologues and just say this is the context of the play and what it's saying, and what it could mean in a greater sense of what she was trying to do with the house and the spirits, channeling wise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just want to say, I don't know at what point it happens, but it's only because I'm looking at this kind of facts thing. But there's a shot where a 3-legged dog appears, and it runs across the scene.
There is a dog. there's a couple of references to like sort of the wild dog running through. That happens just before the children, if memory serves.
Yeah. So there is a three-legged dog. Apparently, they had a three-legged dog for that scene, and it ran off across the countryside while they're trying to shoot. So they ended up, and they couldn't find it in time for when the shoot began. So they had to get another three-legged dog.
No.
So
it's terrible because it's a three-legged dog, and it makes you think, oh well, we haven't got the actual one that had three legs, so we'll get another one. You know, the one that's running through at the beginning of the film, just before the children, looks like it has four legs.
Oh, really? Okay, so maybe it's a bit later on.
There are a couple of dogs. There's
you've obviously got the release the hounds moment later on.
I could be wrong. It moves very fast. Its rear leg could be only one. But yeah, interesting.
Cool.
Hopefully it wasn't a Milo and Otis situation with 17 of them.
Okay, so they check into the house. They meet the very strange Mrs. Pickman, played by
another famous actress,
Frances Bay.
I'm sure that if you saw her face, she'd be in so many different films. I can't think of one right off the top of my head.
I can't either, which is really, really frustrating.
Rude.
Really rude. How rude.
I know, right?
Of me. So I may kind of, if I can Google while we're kind of talking through it, and I'll pick that up in a sec. But she runs and she's a very kind of odd duck. And she...
so genuine and gorgeous in the beginning. The first meeting that we see her, she's a lovely old lady.
And we find out that she's got her husband tied, or handcuffed to her ankle from behind the thing, and he's bollock naked. He is.
Yeah. So we see her again. This is jumping ahead a little bit. But we see her in three sequences, and I kind of love this when filmmakers do this. The perception of the protagonist or the perception of the subject, subjective. So therefore, the actor's demeanor might completely change, because in this first scene, Sam Neill, after this interaction, says, "Oh, if this was the same woman in the book that is supposed to be the same hotel, then she is going to hack up her husband in like coleslaw," which I thought was great, imagery, like coleslaw. But he says, but she's a lovely old lady. And when we saw her in that first scene, she's a lovely old lady. The second scene we see her is lovely. I just love that character. That would be so fun to rehearse that scene with that actress, because the way she is now just like almost speaking in carelessness. And she's at this point, that's when it's revealed that we have her under there. But then the third time we see her, and she's full blown which is great. Evil Dead, I want to say full Evil Dead
Evil
mode.
Dead moment, yeah. The movie, she, I've just kind of while we were talking, so she was in she was actually in that famous film that we've mentioned in the previous podcast called Foul Play.
Oh, really?
And but she also appears in The Karate Kid as Mrs. Milo, the lady that lives on that bottom level. And weirdly, there is a David Lynch connection, because she was also in Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me.
Yes.
She has also starred in The Pit and the Pendulum, which was a film by Stuart Gordon, who also has the Lovecraftian kind of connection. And she was also in Twins. Yay! And Arachnophobia.
And Dragnet. Oh, and Arachnophobia, of course.
Yes.
Of course, how did I forget that? Oh, she's gorgeous in Arachnophobia.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one I'm remembering.
Yeah, she was also on what was it, Golden Girls. She was on one of my favorite TV shows. Was it Dragnet, which was the original Naked Gun.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, so she's been in
loads of things. Yeah,
and she's still kicking.
yeah. In fact, like a big career. She was in Alf. Come on. She was, she's been in a lot of stuff, and just a lot of TV things. If you scroll, like the TV stuff is scrolling on this that I'm looking at.
Keep scrolling. But also too, this is the scene too where there's reference to a painting on the wall.
Yes, which often changes.
Oh, I love it. I kind of want to work out a way of making this painting something that you could put on your wall, and it would do this. It would just freak you out.
Constantly
But
change.
the first thing we see is this beautiful, picturesque sort of lake, grass and tree, and a couple, a man wearing white pants, almost sort of like the quintessential Hollywood dandy sort of thing,
Yeah.
you know, all white.
Great Gatsby kind of
Yes.
idea. Yeah.
College lacrosse boys, like,
Yes.
the jumper over the top, but also arm in arm with a lovely girl, and they're both looking over the lake. In which case, Linda, the character, is watching that whilst Sam Neill is talking with the Miss Pittman about the hotel, and we see that Lydia is responding to the painting, which is changing all the time. It's sometimes the girl will turn around, sometimes they'll both look at her, but it's great and brilliantly eerie, and another thread that is paid off throughout the film, because artifacts or MacGuffins, I find are brilliant, and this film has so many of them.
There's some great like little things that lead to nowhere and then come back to somewhere again, which is awesome in this film. There's the bit here also when they get up to the room. There's the reference to the Black Church, which we were describing earlier, which is often mentioned in Cain's books, and is supposed to be the fount of evil, which is polluting the entire town. and there's a comment where he still doesn't believe at this point too, and he's like, "It's not reality, this is reality," and he's tapping on the on the counter and things like that, being very kind of patronizing. And he opens up the door, the windows, and he's like, there's a barn, and he's like, "Look, see, there's no church there." And she goes, "That's because you're looking in the wrong direction." Opens up the other window, and there's the church, and that's his first moment where he's just like, "Oh, right, fuck." Yeah,
where he is forced to question himself. No, that's right. Because I was interested going to say that in my moment when I was watching that, and he opens up the window, I thought that the what we saw in that barn, because obviously that was an external shot that was specifically shot. It wasn't just the view that we see through the actual window. It's a specific shot, and it looks like it could easily be a church or a commune. I got Waco sort of vibes and stuff like that. But besides that, I also thought if it's his own psyche creating all of this, then he's even lending the credence to justification. He's not turning around saying, "Oh, there's nothing there." He's turning around saying, "Yeah, it's a barn. So it's you're right, it's something, but it's not what is claimed." But then she says, "Yeah, but the view is to the west." They look out to the west and they see this onion shaped a church.
Yeah,
a cathedral. Sorry.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so then they go to try and visit this church. And
I was going to say, did you just want to, just before you do that, did you want to mention that thing that you said before about what that shot is?
Oh, did I say that before we were recording?
Yeah, I think it was before we were recording.
Oh shit!
Sorry.
No, that's cool. I'm going to say it. So that shot of the church. So we see it around the 41-minute mark, and there's a point where in the commentaries, Carpenter and Kidd talk about if it's a matte painting or not, or people have asked if it's a matte painting, and they basically said, "Well, no, it's not. It's actually a Russian Orthodox church in the middle of nowhere." Which is awesome.
And not in Ontario, Canada. This is probably the only thing that isn't.
Yes. And so then that's when they head to the church. That's right. And we meet Vlad the Impaler dude.
Yes. I, Vigo, shall rule the earth. Begone, you pitiful half-wits. But yeah, this church again is in Ontario, Canada. Yep. Actual church in the middle of this huge field. Gorgeous building. Yes. Just absolutely stunning. But yeah, we go up there and they're reading the book that is describing the church as they're walking up there, and as they're about to like go in or something, we see another dog running through the field. And that's when we see a whole bunch of trucks coming, driving up.
Yeah, we should go. We should go now. It's like, no, I need to look and see what's going on.
Yeah, because with that single dog running, it seems like the children are chasing after that because they've got a ball and this sort of stuff. But there's plaques and things on the front of it. But as those people start driving up, she even says they've got guns. We've got to go. And at this point, I was thinking, how the hell does she know that? Which was interesting because they reference that later on. He asks her that. How did you know? But that's when Vigo the Carpathian runs up and demands to see that. The doors fly open and we see a kid.
We see a kid, and the doors keep opening and shutting, opening and shutting, opening and shutting. It's like, God damn it, will somebody pass me the remote?
Yes, clap on, clap off.
And then all of a sudden it opens again, and we see Sutter Cane for the very first time. And he stands looking austere.
Just staring out, yeah.
Yeah. And
just a smile.
Yes, a wry smile. And then the doors close again, and the villagers get irate. But then all of a sudden, big Doberman come chasing after them and attack them.
Yeah. Another thing too, I don't know if it is another thing, but I just noticed that Sam Neill throughout this whole film so far has been wearing a double-breasted jacket. In this scene, he's wearing a single-breasted jacket. And I'm pretty sure he's doing all 3 buttons up. Now, an old school gentleman's thing club, what used to be that you would always wear, if you're wearing a vest or something, you would keep your button undone. And this would usually be with jackets. So if your jacket had 3 buttons, you would leave the button undone. And when you look into the etymology of why that exists, because you'd think it would have a practical reason, like most military outfits do, it only comes down to an in-club sort of thing of like frat boys saying, no, we're all going to do this.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, you're not cool. Pretty much. And from that, it's gone down in history that it's just like, no, that's what you do as a so if ever you see people doing public events, they'll usually keep their bottom button undone. So it's interesting if they're doing that. They may not be doing that, but I don't know. Single-breasted, double-breasted, it could be saying something. Because in this, he's purely playing a spectator. He's seeing the people getting run off and attacked by the dogs in this sort of increasing sort of thing and being pulled away by her. Literally as an observer, because he's got the book in his hand. It's almost as if he is rewriting it at the time.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, that's true.
Could just be like another hint.
Well, the other thing here too, just talking about wardrobe, is that both Sam Neill and Julie Carmen, from the point that they leave to come to the town onwards, until the flashback component of the story ends, they are wearing the same clothes.
Oh, cool. Yeah, exactly. As well, there was also in that sequence before in the alleyway, there's all of the people come up behind him with the axes.
Yeah.
And another terrifying thing, which I thought was really good, was he says something, the goat man guy who attacked them in the cafe says something, and all of the other people turn their axes and start attacking him, which is scary too. It makes him back away. But at the end of that sequence, there's a woman who's standing there, I think in a floral dress with an axe, and she picks up a piece of meat and she goes to eat it, and she's deformed over her eye. And I didn't know if this was supposed to be the Linda character, because this is just after he's met her in that early game. But it would reinforce it as well if she's wearing that same thing in that shot. It would be just interesting.
Yeah, that's true. I have to look back at that now, because I know the shot you mean, but I don't know if that's Julie Carmen or not.
And also, too, looking at that wardrobe, that if at the end of the film, when he's talking to the boy on the bike, if he's wearing the same thing or if he's wearing double-breasted jacket or something like that, because, if this whole sequence he's doing his button-up and everything. It's, it could be subtle clues, or it literally just could be something that the wardrobe is, just gone, oh, well, just say this, save time.
Maybe.
Yeah.
There's going back to just the Doberman that get kind of lynched, that lynch the lynch mob. They apparently caused some serious bites in that of the stuntman during that, which meant the stuntman actually had to go to the hospital.
Oh wow!
During that sequence as well. So yeah, pretty vicious.
Yeah.
And so that sequence happens, and they kind of end up kind of dispersing and going on their merry little way.
Running off. And at that same time, a little kid is, I think, says to Linda, "I see you."
Yes,
I can see you. I see you. And she's all macabrely fucked up.
Yeah, and then that's when the predator comes out, and kicks ass.
Yes.
So this point here, this is where Trent really believes that this is all staged. And he's like, yeah, okay, lovely, well done.
Actors, exactly.
Yeah. But he's prevented from going when Linda steals the car keys.
Yeah.
And that's back at the
and
hotel.
And starts kissing him too. Is just like, you have to stay and stuff like
Yeah.
this. Which he goes downstairs to, and this is where we see the painting again.
Yes.
And I just realized that the woman in the painting is wearing the floral dress and has the same.
Yeah.
It's a scar that like reminds you of what is it? Total Recall.
Yeah.
That
2
scar.
weeks. No.
Yeah. But they're both of the characters in the painting now are staring at Sam Neill as he's come down the stairs.
That's right.
And we can see the church in the background. He lights up another cigarette and checks behind the painting to see if it's been fixed up or anything. Yeah. And that's when Mr. Pittman turns around and says, "No smoking! My husband doesn't like it. You can't."
Yeah. Now put your trousers on.
And she's got sunken eyes.
She has. And yeah, so all this kind of, there's a lot of bits and pieces coming and happening in that section. Excuse me. And at this point too, this is where Linda heads back to the church to confront Cane. And this is where they have and this is where she finally gets to see the novel In the Mouth of Madness, and this is where her madness starts to unfold, or she becomes enveloped in her own madness. And
they call it the Black Church, don't they?
That's it, the Black Church. Yeah.
The Black Church is supposed to be built on an older stone church. And when she goes in there, we can see that stonework that then goes to a door. She opens up, we see a typewriter, closes it, and then hear typing.
That's it.
She goes back and she finds him in a completely different room, like a dimensional room.
Trent goes walking around in the town, and he ends up in a bar. And he meets the guy, the lynch mob leader guy again, who's sitting there with a gun. So this guy warns him to leave before the evil infects him, as it has the inhabitants of Hobbs End. And then he shoots himself.
Well, not yet. As in, there is a sequence. There's about, I think, 2 or 3 shots where we get in the bar with this guy.
Yeah.
And the first time he says, you. This is also the scene just before she has entered the church.
Yes.
But she, so he goes there, and he's the whole time saying, "Oh, you're a great actor. It's fantastic. How much are they paying you?" And he's just saying, "Look, just leave, get out, whilst you haven't been infected yet," kind of thing.
Yes, that's
and he's just like, whatever. But just before she goes into the church, she is confronted by the children because there's a little ball that is behind her.
Yeah.
And she gets it and throws it back to the children. But she sees this real creepy kid with sharp teeth and emaciated face and goat eyes. Very creepy looking. Can't remember what she says, but freaky.
Yeah, she does. She says something. And also there's a scene, I think this is in the scene inside the church as well, which I kind of glossed over and I just realised, where she kind of caresses Cane, and it's revealed that he has a mutant-like creature at the back of his head. Very Total Recall-esque again.
And also very Harry Potter, Voldemort.
Open your mind.
Professor Quirrell.
Open your mind.
Open your mind. But also, too, I just want to mention, too, from a religious point of view, when they go into this church, a lot of people would most likely say that the sconces on the wall, the fire sconces, are sitting on top of an embossed crucifix that's upside down. Most of the time, people say that the upside down or inverted crucifix is a sign of the Antichrist, when actually it is a personification of the what St. Peter did, his sacrifice, because when he was crucified, he said, I can't be compared to our Lord Jesus Christ. Turn my cross upside down so I suffer worse pain. So they did that. And so anyone who's wearing an inverted crucifix is actually saying more to the faith and is actually worshipping God more, or saying at least, I want to experience the pain like Jesus did. It's more of an honorable thing. So a lot of the time when you see Antichrist people, going upside down crucifixes, or satanic whatever's saying, ha ha ha, I'm against the flow, you're actually really just saying more than a crucifix can. Yeah, but it's interesting because I don't know if that was the architecture of the actual church interior. It seems to have the same doors, or if it was a set.
Yeah, yeah.
But just interesting. People might look at that as being Antichrist when, from a theological perspective, it's in honor of Saint Peter. Saint Peter, of course, is in biblical terms the one that you would meet at the gates of heaven. He is also on the site in the St. Peter's Basilica, in St. Paul's Basilica. Sorry, in St. Paul's Square, St. Peter's Basilica, in Rome. The main building.
He was officially the first pope. That's kind of why.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, so
exactly. Yes, you're right. So a lot to do with him. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have the committed suicide scene of the of the lynch mob leader, and then we cut to outside the bar, and there's a mob of mutated, monstrous-looking townspeople that have descended upon the town with shotguns and torches and pickaxes and the like.
Another big what the fuck moment for me was before he pulls the trigger and he goes, "No, don't do it." Sam Neill says, "Don't do it." He says, "But you wrote me this way," and then he pulls the trigger, and I was just like, "Oh, I love it."
You wrote me this way. Fuck it.
Yeah. So good.
And then there's a bit where, so all that stuff's happening outside, and Trent gets back to the hotel again, and that's where he discovers Mrs. Pickman and Linda have also been altered into mutated versions of themselves. And this is getting very kind of Lovecraftian territory with the physical imagery that's on show. And Trent then attempts to drive away from them.
Yeah.
And
she's bursting the door. This is saying, "I'm losing myself. I'm losing myself," and we get that great over the top shot.
Yes, that's a good on Sam.
But at this point, we really get the sense that she's lost it. She's not going to be any help anymore.
In that bar scene as well, there's a bit. That's the bit I was going to come back to from earlier. So jumping back again, sorry. There's a scene where Trent throws a glass in the bar and it's hinted at that was potentially retaliation for the earlier instance where Neil was cut by the window.
It was pretty close to him.
Yeah, because he said he was sitting in front of him and a little piece went in my eye, apparently.
Oh, shit.
Apparently Sam Neill said it wasn't intentional.
I wonder if
the jury's still out.
It might have been Vigo's hand that came through the door. Sorry, Wilhelm's hand.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm tempted to play a Wilhelm scream, purely just. But as well, just on a side note, if you know a Wilhelm scream, which is the sound effect of used in a lot of films, that we still don't know exactly what audio that was from, but we do think that it was recorded based on a vaudeville performer's scream that he did. And it's not the original, but it's somebody else doing it. But that's I don't know if that's legitimate truth. It's just like
cool.
Very small amount of research I did into it. But also too, this is when we see the painting too for like the third time.
Yes,
and it's fully transformed. The grass is still there. The weeping tree is still there. The church is much more prominent, sitting on the lake. And the two people are now Cthulhu-type creatures. They have squiddy things coming out of there. But they also partially look like trees. And it's where this sort of this H.G. Geiger sort of influence seems to be not only mechanical but organic as well.
Yeah, so that's right.
Really trying to bring in these elements, which is great. It's awesome imagery.
And the bit where Linda does her best Regan impression of being upside down.
It was great.
It's actually that was performed by a contortionist. It's not actually the actress Julia Carmen playing that bit, which was kind of cool. But the whole kind of crab walk scene, which was quite weird looking in a glorious way again.
Yeah, that happens because what was it? Linda's come in, she's collapsed on the bed. He's gone, okay, we're going to go. This is the point I think she takes the car keys, and he goes off trying to find Mrs. Pittman. And hears sounds of stuff like this. follows the noise down to the cellar, in which case, in pure darkness, he sees what looks like Henrietta from Evil Dead 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is great. I love those practical effects. And if you saw something like that, they shoot it. Yeah, and they've done it really well in this film, because there's a sequence later on where you see a lot more cosmic horrors, and that you don't see it full on. It's very clever in its execution by going, we're only going to allow you to see enough of it so that you're still scared, but it still looks real. And this is one of the sequences where he gets away. He sees.
That's right. He gets in the car, doesn't he?
Yeah, he runs upstairs, but he hears runs up into the hotel. She's gone, but she drives off, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
No, that's right.
He gets in the car. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, sorry. He goes back up into the room and he sees actually her behind a door with some shadowy things coming around over a shoulder. And then underneath the door, there's all of these tentacles that then
That's right.
fly away. Then she comes out smiling and throws him through the front door. So it's like this possession type thing that happens. And now he runs downstairs and runs outside.
Yeah.
But that was also a vision too that he saw, I think, just before she saw when she read the book. She saw all those things.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, as he's running out, he looks into the greenhouse where they made reference before that in the books there was the plants turned into snake.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And there is a beast that looks very similar to the creature from the Black Lagoon, which to me felt like it was making reference to the Innsmouth people.
Yes.
Yes. I know that's not what they're actually referred to and actually called the creatures, but
no, I know what you mean, because they're the fish-like kind of creatures. Yeah. Excuse me.
And for readers too who or listeners who haven't ever delved into the Lovecraft myth and are interested into it, I would highly recommend the not Dunwich Horror, the Shadow over Innsmouth is a great starting point. It's a very easy, good story that you could easily get involved in, but it intrigues you enough to then listen to other ones. I know that there's some give or take with people's favorites, but Reanimate is always a favorite for mine.
Totally.
Yeah, but Shadow over Innsmouth is a beautiful introductory start.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a great book or short novella. Where are we going with this now? Sorry.
So this is now, he's driven back into the town, and this is where the mob of people are dancing around Linda. Yeah, and this is actually where the point where he goes back into the pub and he sees the Vigo, who's all torn up and disheveled, but also the bar is destroyed too. There's a lot of scratch marks over the walls, and he throws the glass. And this is when he kills himself, because he rode him that way.
That's right. And then he tries to flee in the car and drive away from Hobbs End, but he keeps getting teleported back to the centre of town again as he tries to do so. And he... go on.
He gets punched in the face by Linda when he walks out of the pub.
Oh, I love that bit.
And then he just turns around, punches her in the face and puts her in the car. It was so good. So good.
And
the only justification.
Doesn't she try to attempt to swallow the keys as well? Or...
In the car, yes.
In the car.
She then laughs and she starts dangling. And his reaction is just great, because he's like, Jesus Christ! Because you really get the sense of, if someone tries to swallow that, they're going to probably get some internal injuries.
Yeah.
But he starts forcing it out of her throat, and all this whole time the crowd is walking up to them. Yeah, with the flame torches and stuff like that. But she ends up swallowing the keys or something like that. He gets out a screwdriver and jerry rigs the car.
That's right, yeah. But then he somehow, he ends up crashing the car, though, doesn't he, in the town centre?
So, he reverses and he drives out. Now, this is when we get to the crossroads, in which case she gets out of the car and she does her backwards crab walk.
Yes. That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And then from that, he leaves her and drives back into the town. Now, during this time, when he stopped at that crossroads too, he has seen that kid.
The kid
in
again.
The denim. Yeah, in the payphone. Which he gets out of the payphone and just rides off, and that's when she gets out of the car and does her old creepy thing, which is just great. I mean,
awesome.
Yeah. Very big Evil Dead vibes too from that sequence.
Yes, very much so. So he ends up coming back to Hobbs End, keeps going back into the centre of the town.
Keeps driving into that crowd.
And he crashes the car while trying to avoid hitting Linda. And then he wakes up in a confessional booth of a Catholic church where we meet Kane again. And Kane then is basically explaining the popularity of his stories.
and he will soon free an ancient race of monstrous beings that will reclaim the earth. So this is very similar to From Beyond, where there's these hidden entities that are just waiting to kind of be unleashed into our universe from a parallel universe, and that's what's kind of playing on. And excuse me. And
even in this, we brought up the theological elements before, but even in this, they discussed religion and how the power of the work that's going out there is read by more people than the Bible or some religions.
Yeah.
So because there's more faith in these creatures, that's what's going to give them the power to come forth as well. It almost is that sort of thing of we've made our own beast, like, you know, as in we're the real evil, you know. It's just the personification of our evil doings and what our evil intentions would want to be.
Yeah, they'll come out and manifest themselves into these creatures. So like, and this is where Kane also he then takes Trent to his studio, and this is where he tells him that he is an invented character in one of his stories, basically, and has and because of that he has no choice but to return the In the Mouth of Madness script back to Arcane and begin the destruction of humanity. Yeah. And Trent is like, I'm fucking not doing that. But he so Kane gives Trent the manuscript, and this is the bit where Kane then tears open his face like a piece of paper, ripping a hole
in front of the door.
Darkness, in front of the door. Yeah,
because
it's great effect.
Again, like even with that idea of when she opens the stone door and we see a small room with a typewriter, then she closes it, we hear the typewriter and open it up again, and with the walls, like it's a different dimensional, it's not that same walled stone room, which gives me the impression that it's much more, this is that metaphorical area. So the door isn't really like, you know, it's unlike unleashing this psyche into this world. So him standing in front of that and then tearing both himself and the door open is it's such powerful imagery, but also to how they filmed it. I mean, it's a very interesting process. They would have had to have done a lot of rotoscoping around the hand to animate that down.
That's right.
Yeah, but the movement of the door as well. I mean, which was even I think used in The Haunting, which is that that old film. Like, you know, just moving it, it's fantastic. This rotting feel, you can definitely get this sense of unearthly delights on the other side.
So here's the thing, though. They apparently had to reduce the budget. They originally, I think, had 15 million, and then they lost 5 million in the process of what was guaranteed to them. So it became 10 million, and one of the big cuts had to happen in the third act sequence, which initially saw the entire town being swallowed up into the book. Was what they wanted to visually see. And so instead, the writer Michael DeLuca came up with the idea of the paper being ripped open illusion that we were talking about, was kind of ripping his face and like a page in a book, and that's what they ended up doing. Yes, and so we had that sequence happen, and that's when Trent basically runs through this tunnel, leaving Linda behind, and he's being pursued by these monsters chasing him down the tunnel. And then he trips up and falls over, and he finds himself lying on the floor of a country road, apparently back in reality. And then he's greeted by a kid on a bike. Not the same kid, a paper boy. And that paper boy is Anakin Skywalker.
Really?
It's Hayden Christensen.
It's Hayden Christensen.
Yes. As a young kid. Yeah. I
was about to say it wouldn't be Jake Lloyd.
No, it's not Jake Lloyd. No. Which was kind of a bit of
that's very cool. Yeah. Because he's in the middle of that sort of cross intersection, which reminded me of the moment when he saw the boy in the phone booth on the bike. Exactly, it reminded me of that area.
And it plays with the whole crossroads imagery as well, you know, that we always come to in life, like, you know.
You've got a choice.
Yeah. And so he ends up, he's got the manuscript, and he...
that's right. And also Hayden Christensen...
he returns... so go on.
No, I was just going to say, he's got the bicycle, the cards in his bicycle.
He does.
As well.
That's right, which is really kind of cool.
And also, too, I don't know if it's another thing, but he's coming along the road and he ends up turning down the other street. And it always interests me in films when you go, it seems as if the character has a clear destination and then he's stopped and then has changed their destination, changed their route. Like it happens in Ghostbusters 2016, and it was one of the big annoying things for me. But in this, I'm just watching it again, and it seems to be literally just a continuity thing. Like it's literally just the actor continuing along.
It's going that's the direction I was told to go in.
Exactly.
I was written that way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, Sam Neill wrote him that way.
That's it.
Just like George Lucas later on would.
Yes. If only he could write him to act. And so so Sam Neill then returns back to New York, but he keeps trying to burn the copies of the manuscript, and it keeps coming back to him. And there's a point where he's in a motel, and the kid that is the clerk there is kind of like, there's a mail here for you, and it's the manuscript. And so
I was about to say, because he doesn't bring that along, he leaves it on the side of the road.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it doesn't work. So he ends up having to go back to Arcane Publishing, and that's where he meets with his cold dead hands. Charlton Heston again.
Cold dead hands.
Charlton Heston. Charlton Heston playing Harglow. That was it. Sorry. Who informs him that Linda never existed. What are you talking about? I would have known if I'd have sent this woman with you. I don't know what you're talking about. I sent you alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Like as much as we've seen that sort of like twist happen like in other films, it not being the major twist is really nice. But also too, at this point when you get that information, you're like, of course she isn't real. Like you're like, oh, what else?
Yeah.
You can feel his remorse. Yeah, but he's actively trying to destroy this book. He does not want this to get out there. And so when Charlton Heston says, like, it's been done, there's like, a film coming out next week.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah. He delivered the manuscript months ago. So what are you talking about? It's like, and the book's been on sale for weeks. We've got a movie adaptation, like you said, set to be released. And this is where like Trent thinks he's having a psychotic break. And that's when he then has that snap moment where he goes, he's walking outside the bookstore, and this kid comes out with the new book, In the Mouth of Madness. Oh, yes, have I missed a bit? Go on.
No, I was just going to say, before that, we have, again, it's sort of choppy in this bit, but just after I think he's met with them, he's burnt the book and he's heading towards meeting Charlton. He's on that bus, in which case he's talking to that lady.
Yes.
Yeah, and Sutton Foster is an amazing Broadway performer, and if you haven't seen Shrek, the Broadway version of that, definitely see it. She plays Princess Fiona, gorgeous. Anyway, Sutter Cane is sitting in the bus and basically says, there's no way you can stop it.
But there's this great moment where I forgot about that minute. Yeah, because he's on the bus coming back, and he's like, you can't avoid it. And there's this. He's talking to him, and he goes, did I tell you my favourite colour is blue? And then he wakes up and the whole of the coach is blue. Everything's lit blue. And it's just like, it's a beautiful.
It's crazy. And that reaction's so good. Everyone on the bus too, snapping to it. It's brilliant. Yeah, and I've seen that image so many times. That was one of those images that was definitely one of the iconic images. Him going crazy. And that's interesting enough because it definitely induces madness. But then after this too, he's walking along. He has a couple of meetings with, I think, another lady in an office, which he demands to speak to the supervisor, and he's definitely noticed the off hinge. But he's walking down this same alleyway, and it's again this repeat sequence where he's now got his same outfit on and he's all closed up. But he's walking down this alleyway. He sees the Hobbs End horror poster, and he starts to peel that thing away again to look at what's underneath the sign.
Yes.
He peels it away, and we see an artistic render of Sam Neill, the actor, on the cover of a book, which is what we will soon find out is In the Mouth of Madness book cover. And it's down to the mole on Sam Neill's cheek. It is Sam Neill. It's great. Because then after that, he goes around the corner, he looks down the alleyway, and no one's in the alleyway. No cop, no homeless people, no nothing.
No.
From that's when we meet Charlton Heston. And from a cinematography point of view too, the shot that leads from that is a symmetrical shot looking down the alley over Sam Neill's shoulder. And then it cuts to a low-angle shot where Charlton Heston and Sam Neill are all in silhouette. You can't see either of their faces, but you can definitely see the slumped-over nature of Sam Neill in the shot, and it looks off-putting. Like again, when you sort of see that, like from a symmetrical shot to now a kilted, it looks like a fly on the wall sort of shot.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Nice.
that's when we get the exposition dump of saying Linda never existed.
And all that stuff. But then we get that scene where so he's outside the shop, the bookshop. The kid comes out and he says, "Did you like the book?" And he says, "Yeah." He goes, "Well." Hold on, what's that line he says? You said it earlier, sorry.
He's bleeding from the eyes. I can't remember what he actually says.
Bleeding from the eyes, and then Sam Neill kind of says, of course.
Did you
like then you know this would happen, or something.
Yeah. Hold on, I've got it just happening now. Okay, so it's coming over the scene. We see now the image of Sam Neill's face and Sutter Cane's poster.
Yeah.
Zooming in as Sutter Cane is now still like this in the same outfit, all disheveled and sweaty, gross, looking at it. There we go. So this guy comes out, he's reading the book, his eyes are bleeding.
Yep.
Then this shouldn't come as a surprise. Takes to the axe.
And then Will's deliver, that's it. Yeah, shouldn't come as a surprise.
And the look as well on that boy's face as he's getting it, it's almost a look of like, oh no, like it's going to happen, but he almost sort of expected it, and he's sort of like almost like disappointed, like I'm sorry, Mum, sort of like, which is beautiful. This is also too, Sam Neill is now wearing something else. He's now wearing a like jacket, a flak jacket.
Yeah, that's right. The costume changes. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
and then that's when he obviously from that incident, that's what brings him to the psych ward. And so we're back again with Dr. Wren, David Warner, and they're kind of having their little chat about what's happened. And they have that kind of little moment. And this is where, after listening to Trent's story, basically Dr. Wren's response is that, just dismisses it and thinks he's just insane and leaves. And then Trent, and then we have that moment where he walks out and we have the camp dude again, kind of asking about it. He's just like, I think he obviously believes it's true. And then
read Sutter Cane. It's so beautiful.
But he doesn't though, does he? Or he doesn't allude to the fact he does read him.
Yeah, at this point, no. Right at the beginning, I think he says something along the lines of, "No, he hasn't seen any of the stuff," because they comment about the riots or the.
That's it.
Like that, because it's still just the same. But we do get the sense from this. I don't know, the intrigue that the guy leaves, Billy Zane's bodyguard leaves, gives me the impression that I don't know. I feel like he is. I feel like it's going to, go that way. Having said that, in this story, it is only this subjective point of view. So whether or not he's just a vehicle for Sam Neill's psyche or whatever, it's a brilliant interpretation, but it definitely changes him.
Yes, absolutely.
I was going to say that as well, just before I mentioned the smoking too. And in this scene, because it's a couple of frantic scenes when he goes down, he sees Mrs. The lady just before, and he smokes. After that, in the car when he's running away, and he keeps trying to run away, and he smokes that. Then he tries to light a cigarette when he's in the confession booth. There is a screw.
That's right.
Unscrewed. He tries to light the match. Now, again, for people who aren't necessarily aware of matchsticks and sulfur and phosphorus, it's a very interesting story. So originally,
I am aware of this. Yeah, go on.
One of the match techniques they used to have was literally air activated. You would take the matchstick out of its case, and it would literally just light because it would be started by the air. That obviously was very dangerous, so they changed all of that and developed what we now know as relatively safety matches, something that you would have to agitate and create a spark for. So, that was why he's trying to do that. He's trying to get anything. A lot of the old Westerns, you'll see them lighting it on their stubble.
Yeah.
That's not possible because we have oil, but lighting it from your boot or anywhere that there's going to be some sort of agitated area. Surprisingly enough, I also recently found out to make phosphorus. I think it is phosphorus.
Yeah, it's phosphorus.
Boil urine.
Traces. Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't do it, do not do it. As in, it is highly explosive because obviously, if you boil away the liquid from the urine, you are left with phosphorus, and phosphorus is highly flammable. I'm not too sure of the flash point on it, but it's very dangerous. But that's one of the things they used to do. So they would put sulfur on one end and phosphorus on the other, and that's just part of the story. But that's why he's lighting it there. But he doesn't light the cigarette. He doesn't smoke that cigarette. No. So from that point, he doesn't smoke. Back in the office with Charlton Heston, where he was smoking before, he's not smoking there. Nobody else is. So it again feels like after watching it and seeing in that confession scene that he can't light it, I feel that's almost like his, like tobacco and nicotine is almost a crutch, because what nicotine does to our brain is it creates a confidence and it's very good for our brain because it gives us all of this confidence and makes us do a lot of things. But there's no safe way of putting it into our body. So to me, the smoking in that, obviously people smoke when they're stressed because it gives them more confidence. It makes you feel more in control. Yeah. But he was taking it in that case, obviously, because he's getting more and more nervous. He's taking them more and more. But now he can't. It's almost like he's lost that crutch, even to the point now where he's drawing the crucifixes on his skull because he knows he has to stay in there. Because if he goes out there, he's going to have to face those cosmic horrors. Yeah. So I just found that interesting there. It sort of all came to fruition where it was like most likely that was the case. But, but matches are interesting history by themselves.
Yes, they are. They are. Yes, I can concur. And that would be a completely different podcast if we were to go down that road. But yes, so we then have Trent waking up the following day and to find that his cell door has been torn off from its hinges, and he wakes up. This is very kind of from a more not that it's very recent nowadays, but the end sequence of Resident Evil, where she wakes up in the hospital and everything's just kind of completely decimated. Very similar thing. Yeah.
Yes. Great. Also, a trailer bait for that film too.
Yes.
But we hear before the door gets ripped off, we see shadows of silhouettes of people getting thrown about, and it doesn't look like a riot or anything because the lightning's going off at the same time. Yes. But it sounds like cosmic horrors. Those things that we saw before are devouring people.
That's right.
And the window smashes again, and is left pretty torn apart.
That's right. Yeah. So when he actually comes out, like you can see like remnants and bits and pieces of the people that were in the hospital, pretty much slaughtered and ripped apart. He comes out of the asylum, and there's an ambulance there, and we hear on the ambulance radio that the world has been overrun with mutant creatures and outbreaks of suicide and psychotic mass murders. And this is when Trent just makes his way into town, comes to a cinema where they're playing In the Mouth of Madness.
Starring him.
And so, and he sees all the incidents that have occurred so far. And he just starts laughing hysterically as he watches his own experiences. And we catch up to his current situation. And his laughter becomes manic and then sobs of despair, finally realizing that he's just a work of fiction. And that is where the film comes to an end.
It's great. I love it. Because also, too, when he sits down and he starts watching it, it starts like it's not mid-film or it doesn't feel like that. It starts from the perspective of him going, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. This is reality. This is reality. And if you were to look at just that footage, you would go, this guy's crazy. Because all he is saying is, no, I'm not insane. I'm not insane. Yeah. Which most of the time is the most insane.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Also, too, just in the cast credits, Frances Bay is Miss Pittman is the first one to be credited.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, it must have been done in alphabetical order or something.
Maybe, yeah, I didn't realise that, but yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. But again, the chokingness, the way that Sam Neill as well portrays that whole laughter, where you can see that it's the insane sadness behind it and just his loss of giving in. Because they obviously want him to stay the way he is because they would have destroyed him as well.
Yeah, but that's what I found interesting too. Like they kind of need him to be like still in existence.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Which does that beg the question that they only can exist because of him?
Yeah. Well, because again, from my perspective, I almost took it from that the subjective story, the whole thing being extremely subjective, to the point of it's all been in his head, or it's all been a justification. Having said that, it's not a film where you're like, oh, he's insane. It's well beyond that. But interpretation of the film, it feels like everything has been him justifying doing all of this. I don't even know if he was ever got commissioned to do the book. I don't even know if the world exists. You could easily say that this same perspective in a Rick and Morty sort of sense could be told in a Roy game. You could easily say to any civilization, this is a horrific sort of tale purely from a subjective perspective. Which makes it even more terrifying, because at the end, when you see the lead character, who again is played by such an honest actor, crying to the point that you want to end his suffering. It's great. And it also allows the audience to insert their own horrors into it too, because there's flashing elements, and we get the idea that it's him watching his own reflection of the world and story. That it makes us then think, well, how crazy do we seem to other people?
Totally. So here's the thing. So like when it was released, it was kind of got number 4, I think, in the box office. So it wasn't like it wasn't setting the world alight.
Yeah.
And it kind of dropped to like 7 after the second week, and dropped out of the top 10 by week 3. It ended up grossing just under 9 million on a budget. So because of that, it was considered, because it was made for 10. It was considered a box office failure.
Damn.
But has since kind of, where's that note I put there? Yeah, it's kind of averages about 5.5 out of 10 on the ratings. I think Rotten Tomatoes has it at 59%. So it's kind of very average, but
yet its audience score is at 73. As you said, I think in the VHS market, a lot of these films, that's where they get their cult status.
Absolutely, and it has become a cult film, and there's a lot more positive reviews that have come more recently than when it was first released. And has raised the profile of it a lot more. And I have to say, like, I kind of opened up at the beginning of the podcast saying that I do feel like this is his last really big, great film, because I can't remember when I first watched it, along with a lot of these things. I would have said probably I would have watched it around that kind of late 90s time frame. And I don't know if I've ever watched it since, until leading up to the podcast, and I'm all the that's all the more sorry for that, because I love this film. I think it's it's such a disturbingly kind of well crafted film.
Absolutely.
And that's why I do stand by what I said about how I feel like this is the last really cool film that Carpenter made. And I think I would highly recommend it. So to modern going audience, I think there's still enough there to resonate with the audience. But you coming into it quite fresh, like, how did you find it after you first watched it? What was your kind of gut reaction to it?
I really enjoyed it from the get-go. I kind of felt safe with Sam Neill being there as well.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what to expect, but I was very quickly hooked. I can't remember at which point. Probably the cafe scene. That was where I was definitely on board.
That was a good moment. Yeah,
because I was intrigued. I wanted to know more, and it was just enough questions that left you interested. I'm watching The Umbrella Academy at the moment and The Boys, 2 TV shows. Which are very good. But I'm finding that The Umbrella Academy, because the subject matter is very, it doesn't reveal anything, and it doesn't ask a lot of questions. It just holds back.
Yeah.
But it's playing it out in such a way that it's really a slog to get through each episode. It really feels like it needs to pick its pace up in that. And this is where like this film felt like those paces were right at the perfect timing to come in. So yeah, it had me on board. Then every Lovecraftian element got me even more on board. I started looking into everything. But then once you got the idea of the sense of this is all cosmic horrors and she's getting manipulated and stuff like this, the Sutter Cane idea and the church elements, I loved it. It very much spoke to what I find interesting, both in a horror story, but also too in studying as well as etymology and looking into backgrounds and stuff like that. So and then even as you're saying, to see this in the cinema, I think would be very, like at the end of it would be a very surreal experience to then have the lights come up and you go, oh, cool. Whoa. Like, whereas watching it on a TV in your own pace was really good, and it really made me feel like looking over my shoulder, which was great. No, I would highly recommend it.
I find it really interesting as a companion piece to Prince of Darkness, which obviously came before this, and serves as part of that Apocalypse trilogy that I was talking about earlier. And the reason I say it, because it feels like it's that one step further on from where Prince of Darkness left us. And it's that kind of... And what I mean by that is that in Prince of Darkness, there's a lot of theological discussions that are at play. And this feels like it just takes it that one step further to moving beyond theology and into the unknown component of it, which I thought was a really kind of cool take. And... yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed the ride on this one, I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm pretty sure, like, Lovecraftian horror might not be for everyone or everyone's cup of tea, but something like, this sort of a film might make people sort of just turn around and go, oh, it's conventional, like, a bit more jump scares, they require it. But beyond that, I find those scares on the bike and stuff like that, and the psychological stuff, even the moment when she starts to, out of the blue, start kissing him to make him stay, I was like, that's great. And then she starts doing it again in the car, and he's like, get the hell off me. It really, really good. I really enjoyed it. So,
I know what you mean. It's there's all this kind of physical kind of energy that's kind of inserted into the film as well, and it's like he's a smart guy and he's finding that there's so many barriers to him, like both physically and in alternate dimensions as well. Like that is preventing him from, like, he has to carry out the course. His purpose is to serve the manuscript up. He's doomed to to carry that through to its fruition. So
and couple that too with, like, even the skeptical thing, because I'm sure everybody does it in their life for different reasons, but everyone will go, no, I know that this is, if I do this, it'll have this effect. So to have that challenged, I felt like, that is usually something that most people won't admit it, but is a big fear when you go, no, I know this is going to have this outcome. So I know that if I pay my electricity bill, like, blah will happen. So if you do pay it and then something doesn't happen, it's a fear. But amazing cast. I mean, surprised to see Charlton Heston in there. Surprised to see actually it was a flop, because I would have thought it would have made it about the same back. But
definitely didn't, which was weird, because, like I said, like I didn't know that until I was just reading up on it, because I remember having a strong memory of watching it when I was a bit younger, and really liking it, and rewatching it now, I'm like even more kind of loving the film. So reading that kind of statistic, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that. I just came with the impression that it was a successful film. So
same. And maybe that's biased because we enjoyed it.
Maybe.
But I was really going to say, what was her name? Julie Carmen. As well. Is not necessarily it's my favorite film. It's a sequel to a very good film that I like, which is Fright Night Part 2. She played Regine Dandridge in that. So that was good to see that, like, she was in that. And she was also surprisingly, what was it? She was in a telly movie that, I found it just before. Damn it. The Omen. She was in the TV movie of The Omen.
Oh, sure.
So that might be another...
kind of playing with that whole kind of concept of craziness, I tell you.
In 1995. But also, too, with the whole link to Sam Neill.
Yeah, it all comes full circle.
Exactly. It's Ouroboros.
Yeah, it all comes full circle.
It's like they all come full circle.
It kind of is.
And repetition. Not to mention repetition.
We should probably mention repetition at some point. It's
one of the secrets of comedy. That and timing.
Nice. And speaking of timing, it's our time to probably bow out on our comments on the Surgeons of Horror podcast discussions on John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. Do stick around as we continue our discussions on John Carpenter's career and we move into what would be his next film, The Village of the Damned, remake in itself. And as we mentioned, were echoes of that in this. So obviously maybe that was kind of playing on his mind while he was filming this. Who knows? We'll discuss that in our next podcast. Until then, I'm your lead host, Saul Muerte. Let us know if you've got any thoughts on this film, actually. If you agree with us, if you think it deserves more accolade than it does, let us know. And before we bow out, I should extend my thanks also to my podcast sidekick, Mr. Lovegrove. Thank you once again for joining us in the discussions.
As always, a pleasure. The body count was high. The casualties are heavy.
And until next time, keep reading, Sutter Cane. Goodbye.
Yes. And as a PPS, I guess I'd say, did you know my favorite color is blue? Not only that, but the credits are also in blue.
Are they? I'm going to have to rewatch that now.
Yeah, and also when I said before, the body count was high, the casualties are heavy was also in the end of the credits. It's after they thanked the Psychiatric Association.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
Yeah, Planetary Psychiatric Association. So, yes.
Excellent.
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.